Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. Yesterday was a strange day, and I was a bit shaken. I'm not sure if I did my first act of malicious compliance or not. Please tell me if it wasn't. There's my company, and there's the other company, and both cooperate occasionally. In my company, I am one of two people who have a monthly ticket for trams and buses. The rest of the employees travel by cars. The other company is in the old city zone where only cars with an official permit can travel and park. So if my boss needs someone to go there, it is either my coworker or me. 2 days ago, he asked me because I was around while my colleague was on a lunch break. I was to deliver some documents. It is faster than hiring a courier because a courier must take a package to a warehouse where it is registered and then sent out. So it could take a whole day if a courier picks it up late. If my colleague or I go to the other company, it only takes 45 to 60 minutes. The way my boss explained, I was to go to the other company, and they set a time interval from 3 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. So I was to leave around 2 p.m. Everything was clear. My boss wrote an email when I was leaving, so they knew when I was to arrive. They confirmed, and everything was set. I arrived just after 3 p.m. I was supposed to leave the package, but I couldn't. Their lady manager was supposed to check it and then notify my boss if any documents were missing. So where was she? I missed her by a whole 5 to 10 minutes. I had to wait for her because not one person in the other company knew which documents were in the package. But it's all good, she'll be back in 15 minutes. I shouldn't worry and shouldn't tell my boss. That part was weird. So I grabbed my phone, wrote a message saying, "There's a misunderstanding," sending an email, and then sent a detailed email with a description, without blaming the other company. There must be a misunderstanding because, and here I put what they told me. The timestamp was 3:03 p.m., so I was definitely not late. What was even weirder was that my boss checked the reply from the lady manager, and she confirmed. Not an employee, the lady in person. So I sat there, grabbed a book on my phone, and everything was perfectly fine. About 30 minutes later, my boss asked if I had delivered the documents. Still no lady manager around. I asked, and they weren't allowed to call her. But there was no need to notify my boss, they were sure she'd be there any minute. So I wrote another text, "No lady manager around," sending email, added a detailed description, including their statement, they weren't allowed, and kept waiting. Another 30 minutes passed, and still no lady boss. My boss called them, and they pretty much repeated what they had been telling me. I added another email, "Boss, I listened to your conversation. They aren't happy, but I couldn't wait outside. They insisted I was not to wander around with the documents." I got a response, "Not a problem, do what they suggest and notify me immediately." So I kept waiting. They offered me a mineral water, which I declined. I wrote to my boss and got an email back. Close to 4:40 p.m., the lady manager barged in. She asked why I wasn't there earlier, as they had decided. I grabbed my phone, read the timestamp, and read the email with the set conditions. She turned reddish purple, took the package, and said I could go. I apologized and said I couldn't go. I was told repeatedly she was to check if any documents were missing. She insisted, so I wrote a text to my boss, "She doesn't want to check documents," sending email. And I read the message. She was not happy, but finally decided to check the documents. I thanked her, waited for her email to my boss, and wrote another email immediately. I left only when my boss wrote back that she had really confirmed all the documents were in the package. Later, she contacted the owner and blamed us. It was my luck that I wrote all the emails so meticulously. When the owner called my boss all furious, it was easy to provide copies. My boss asked me today to come to his office and let me read the emails to and from the owner of the other company. There was a lawyer who explained that under normal circumstances, I wouldn't be allowed to read it, but the lady manager insisted we did something wrong, especially me. Since it was also about me, I was to read it even if I wasn't the recipient. They also asked me to print the emails directly from my email account, screenshots from my mobile, and write a detailed note from all of this, including timestamps from my emails, which I did. I don't know what it was. A weird power play, a way to discredit the other company. I don't even know if it was malicious compliance or not. Sorry. I don't think my boss or the lawyer will tell me more. Possibly if they try to sue, but why should they? This happened roughly 2 weeks ago. My mother, 36 years old, and I, 16 years old, were pulling into a parking lot for a store called Home Bargains. For those unfamiliar, Home Bargains is a large store in the United Kingdom that sells a variety of items at low prices. We drive a brand new convertible BMW, which becomes important later in the story. My mother parked in the last available disabled parking space. To provide some context, my mother has severe back issues and cannot stand or walk for long periods without experiencing significant pain. Because of this, we have a disabled badge that allows us to park close to shop entrances. As I got out of the car and walked around to the trunk to grab some bags, a woman, the entitled parent of this story, started yelling at me, claiming we couldn't park there. The conversation went as follows. Entitled mother, "Excuse me," turning around with a confused expression. Entitled mother, "You just took my parking spot. She was behind us when we pulled in, so we didn't take her spot." Me, "I wasn't driving, sorry I guess." Entitled mother, "This spot is for disabled people and parents with children. You need to move now. I have children in the back." Me, "We have a disability badge in the car. We're allowed to be here." Entitled mother, "You don't look disabled in the slightest. These spots are only for disabled people." Me, "Yes, my mom is." She cut me off, shouting. Entitled mother, "People like you disgust me. You think you're entitled to park anywhere you want. You need to move your stupid car before I call the police." At this point, she got out of her car and was getting very close to me, shouting in my face. Until now, my mother was waiting in the car for me to grab her a trolley to lean on while we shopped. However, when she heard the shouting, she got out of the car. Mother shouting, hey, that is a child. Why are you getting in her face?" My mother used to work in a bar, so she can be very intimidating when she wants to be. Entitled mother, "You can't park here. This is for disabled people and parents only, you entitled witch. I have 2 kids who are hungry. I need this spot." Mother, "I have a medical condition. Details withheld for privacy. I am allowed to park here, and it is none of your business." She went to grab the badge to show this woman. Entitled mother, still shouting while my mother got the badge, "Women like you think they can do anything they want. You're vile." She was likely referring to my mother's appearance and our new car. For context, my mother is very attractive, and the woman probably assumed we were wealthy, which we are not. I had walked away at this point. A few more words were exchanged while my mother showed her the badge, which I did not fully hear. The woman gave us a dirty look, called my mother a tramp, and then drove off to park somewhere else. We went into the store and continued with our day. A boy around my age, apparently the entitled mother's son, approached us while we were shopping and apologized profusely for what happened. We told him it wasn't his fault and walked away. We spent about 40 minutes in the store, and when we came out we saw that the passenger side door of our car had 3 huge scratch marks. The entitled mother had keyed our car because we parked where we were allowed to. We immediately connected the dots. My mother went inside to speak to the security team while I called the non-emergency police line to report the incident. Fast forward a few days, and we received word from the police. They identified the woman from security footage, showing her keying our car and her license plate number during the argument between us. How foolish was she to do it in broad daylight in front of a busy store? According to the police, she denied everything and insisted we did it ourselves to frame her. We are currently awaiting a court date for vandalism and an insurance payout to get the car fixed. We have the security footage of her scratching the car as evidence, so we believe we will be fine in both court and insurance terms. I will update if anyone is interested. It also occurred to me after writing this that her son had to be at least 15. and parent and child bays in the United Kingdom are usually limited to children under 5, so she couldn't even park there if she wanted to. To this day, I will always know that a small cyclone, now called a frenzy, from Friendly's was $3.69 in 1999. You see, I was working the ice cream area during a weekend day when Karen walked up and wanted a small cyclone. During that time, the store manager told us to ask if people wanted pennies back since there was a shortage. After taking Karen's order, she gives me $5. This means that I have to give her a penny, a nickel, a quarter, and a dollar. I asked if she wanted her penny, to which she put her hands on her hips and huffed, "Yes, I want my penny back." Now, to make a cyclone, I needed to mix soft-serve ice cream with the fillings, and then insert this special spoon into a custom mixer. This spins the spoon and mixes everything up. Super wasteful. There was one issue with this. Sometimes the spoons would break. This was new technology at the time. After a few times of having to throw out the product because there could be plastic chunks when the spoon breaks, we took to just spinning by hand. I make her ice cream and then hand it to her. She complains that I didn't use the mixer and demands I use the spoon mixer. So I take it back, hook it up and spin it, making sure I count out how long we are supposed to spin so she can't complain about that. This makes a mess. Oh yeah, it also made a mess when doing this. And I need to wipe down the cup. When I handed it back, I missed a spot, and she used a napkin to wipe it down. She asks for another napkin. At that point, Mary, a waitress, steps in front of the computer, which had the napkins on a shelf underneath. I asked Mary if she could pass me one, and hand it to Karen. She now demands to see my manager. So I call the shift manager Maggie over, and I step out of view. Mary joins me as well since she is curious as to what this woman's problem is. She goes off about how unprofessional I was. I was begging to keep the penny as a tip. I didn't use the mixer properly. I handed her dirty ice cream, and I was rude to the nice waitress. Maggie calms her down and gives her a refund to get Karen to leave. On my next shift, Maggie came over and told me that she called corporate to complain about me. Maggie had my back after she and Mary spoke with the corporate overlord. Nothing else came about from it, except for all of us now mimicking the noise the machine makes, so people would be none the wiser. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. It was a busy Friday afternoon, and I found myself standing in a long queue at the bank. I had some bills to pay, and I figured I'd get it done before the weekend. As I waited, I pulled out my phone to make an online payment. I needed my credit card details, so I held the card in my hand while I typed. That's when I noticed the woman sitting on a nearby bench. She had a little boy with her, probably around 2 years old. The kid was squirming and fussing, clearly bored with waiting at the bank. I felt a bit sorry for the mom dealing with a restless toddler in such a dull place. I went back to focusing on my phone, trying to finish my transaction before it was my turn at the counter. Suddenly, I felt a tug on my hand. I looked down to see the little boy reaching for my credit card. At first, I didn't think much of it. Kids are curious, right? I figured he'd just look at it for a second and give it back. Boy, was I wrong. Before I could react, the toddler had my card in his mouth, gnawing on it like it was a teething toy. Alarmed, I quickly but gently took the card from him. Me, oh no buddy, we can't put that in our mouth. It's not for eating. The moment I took the card away, the kid started wailing like a fire engine. His mom's head snapped up and she glared at me like I'd just kicked a puppy. Mom, what did you do to my baby, me? I'm sorry. He grabbed my credit card and started chewing on it. I just took it back. Mom. So what? He's just a baby. If he wants to play with it, let him play with it. I was stunned. Was this lady for real? Me. Ma'am, it's my credit card. It has all my personal information on it. I can't just let a stranger's child play with it. Mom. Don't be so selfish. It's just a piece of plastic. My son is bored, and if he wants your card, you should let him have it. By this point, people in the queue were starting to stare. I felt my face getting hot with embarrassment, but I stood my ground. Me. I'm sorry, but no, this is my property, and I need it. Maybe you could bring some toys for your son next time you come to the bank. The woman's face turned an alarming shade of red. She stood up, still holding her crying toddler. "Mom, how dare you tell me how to parent my child? You're just a selfish, child-hating monster." I was at a loss for words. How had this situation escalated so quickly? I tried to diffuse the tension. "Me. Look, I didn't mean to upset you or your son. I just need my card back, that's all." But she wasn't having any of it. In a move that left me absolutely gobsmacked, she reached out and snatched the credit card right out of my hand. "Mom, fine, if you won't let my precious boy play with it, then nobody gets to use it." And then, right before my eyes, she started bending and twisting my credit card, trying to break it in half. When that didn't work, she pulled out a pair of scissors from her purse. Who carries scissors in their purse? And started cutting my card into pieces. I was too shocked to move for a moment. Was this really happening? Me. "Stop, what are you doing? That's my property, Mom." "Well, you wouldn't share it with my son, so now it's garbage." By this point, the bank's security guard had noticed the commotion and was heading our way. But the damage was already done. My credit card was in shreds on the floor. "Security guard, what's going on here?" "Me. This woman just destroyed my credit card because I wouldn't let her son play with it." The entitled mom immediately put on a show of innocence. "Mom, that's not true. This person was mean to my baby and made him cry. I was just defending my child." Security guard. "Ma'am, did you cut up this person's credit card?" Mom. "Well, yes, but security guard, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises immediately. We don't tolerate this kind of behavior here." The woman looked outraged. "Mom, what? You can't kick me out. I'm a customer. I have rights." Security guard. "Not when you're destroying other people's property. You don't. Please leave now or I'll have to call the police." Muttering under her breath, the woman gathered her things and her still crying toddler and stomped out of the bank. The security guard turned to me. "Security guard, I'm sorry about that, sir. Would you like to file a report?" I nodded, still in disbelief at what had just happened. "Me, yes please. And I guess I need to talk to someone about getting a new card issued." The guard escorted me to a private office where I could speak with a bank representative. As we walked, I could hear people in the queue murmuring about what they'd just witnessed. Bank representative. "I understand you've had an incident with your credit card." Me. "You could say that. A woman just cut it to pieces because I wouldn't let her toddler play with it." The representative's eyes widened in surprise. Bank representative. "I see. Well, that's certainly a new one. Let's get you sorted out with a new card right away." As we went through the process of canceling my old card and issuing a new one, I couldn't help but replay the bizarre encounter in my mind. Who acts like that? Who thinks it's okay to demand a stranger's credit card for their child to play with, let alone destroy it when they don't get their way? Bank representative. "All right, we've canceled your old card and ordered a new one. It should arrive in 5 to 7 business days. In the meantime, is there anything else you need?" Me. "No, thank you. You've been very helpful." As I left the bank, I felt a mix of emotions: anger at the entitled mom, sympathy for her poor kid who was being raised by such a person, and disbelief at the whole situation. I decided to stop by the police station on my way home to file a report, just in case the woman tried to use any of my card information. At the police station, I recounted the story once again to an officer who looked like he'd heard it all. Police officer. "So let me get this straight. This woman destroyed your credit card because you wouldn't let her toddler play with it?" Me. "That's right." Police officer. "And she did this in full view of everyone at the bank?" Me. "Yes, including the security guard." The officer shook his head, clearly amazed at the audacity of some people. Police officer. "Well, we'll file a report and see if the bank has any security footage we can use. You did the right thing by coming here. Some people think they can get away with anything." As I finally made my way home, I couldn't help but wonder about the entitled mom. Did she realize how ridiculous her behavior was? Did she go home and tell her friends and family about the mean person at the bank who wouldn't let her precious child play with a credit card? Or did she have a moment of clarity and feel ashamed of her actions? It happened a couple of months ago, and I encountered 2 difficult customers in one day. So, the first one. I was at the self-checkout, which I dislike, by the way. There was a man who passed by, scanned a beer and scanned my card to accept it. At the same time, I noticed he had items in his bag. I said nothing, just in case he planned to scan them later. Some people become very aggressive when you show suspicion. He paid and left. I discovered he hadn't scanned his items except for the beer. I tried to intercept him but failed, so I called my manager near the exit. My manager followed him and found him in the mall. It turned out he had already paid for his items and had the receipt. All was well, but he hadn't informed me that it was already paid for, which was my mistake. But this is where it got interesting. The man returned, yelling that I was discriminating against him because he had tattoos. What in the world? I have many friends with tattoos and even want some myself. He claimed I always watched him at the self-checkout, but it was the first time I had seen him. He tried to approach me, but my manager blocked him. This went on for about 5 minutes before he left. About 10 minutes later, he surprised me at the self-checkout, grabbed my card, thinking it was my badge with my name, noticed it was not my name, and let it go. He yelled, "Tell me your name," to which I replied no because I was afraid for my safety. I immediately called the supervisor and asked for anyone to come to the self-checkout. The man demanded to see my manager. I calmly informed him that my manager was already coming, although he didn't realize the same person he argued with earlier was my manager. After what felt like an eternity but was actually about a minute, the supervisor arrived and took him away from me. I informed her that I didn't want her to tell him my name, and she agreed. Then my manager arrived and told the man we don't give names to aggressive people. The man started yelling again. My manager told him to leave, warning that if he returned, the police would be called. Meanwhile, my assistant manager advised me to keep my phone with me, and if he returned, they would keep him distracted while I went to the director's office to call the police. He didn't come back that night, but returned the next morning wanting to see the director. The director told him to stay away from me and the supervisor, or he would be banned from the store. The director also reassured me during my next shift that I was fine and not at risk since I was just doing my job. That's it for the first one, which was easily the worst encounter I've had so far. Now for the second one, which happened the same day as the previous incident. We had just closed the store at 10 p.m. when a man appeared at the exit, forced the door open, and thrust his phone in my face, stating it was still 9:59 p.m. so we were still open. Seriously? I calmly told him, "Sir, we are closed." "Sorry," with a neutral voice and face. He responded, "I don't like the way you're talking to me. You should smile and be more polite." What did he expect me to say? We were closed, and no, I wouldn't tell him that with a big smile. I said nothing further, expecting him to leave, but he didn't. So I said, "Sir, I'm going to ask you to leave. We are closed." He replied, "You are not closed yet." I reiterated, "Sir, we are closed. You can't go shopping right now. Come back tomorrow." He continued, "I don't like the way you are talking to me." He tried to go around me to enter the store. I raised my voice, "Sir, I've told you 5 times, removing some of the repeated sorries. We are closed. You are not allowed inside. Either you leave or I'm calling my manager," the same one who had protected me earlier. The man complained, "Why are you raising your voice? That's not how you interact with a customer." At this point, I thought, forget this. I'm not paid enough to deal with this, so I called my manager. When my manager arrived, the man complained, "This employee was super rude to me and yelled at me when I just wanted to get inside." My manager asked for my version and I explained everything. The manager said, "So he told you 5 times that we were closed before raising his voice because you tried to pass?" The man replied. "No, he didn't tell me even once," the manager responded. "Well, he says he told you 5 times and you say 0. We'll take the middle ground and say he told you 3 times, which should have been enough," the man insisted. "You shouldn't talk like that to a customer," my manager firmly replied. "We are closed. You can't go in." That's my natural voice and I'm direct. I'm not yelling. "Now you leave the property or we are calling the police." "It's well past 10 p.m., the man retorted. "Go forget yourself," and then left. At this point it was quite funny. I feel like I'm losing my mind here. I'm a 17-year-old female, about to graduate, so it's a given that my parents are a little on edge. Not just a little, they've thrown themselves off and hit every paranoia tree on the way down. A bit of background. My parents are Hispanic, from Puerto Rico, and therefore so am I. They are also heavily Catholic, whereas I am not. I have been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, both attention and hyperactivity. As I mentioned earlier, I'm about to graduate, which has made me take a step back and look at my life. I want to preface this by saying my parents are not bad people, and I have been lucky enough to enjoy a comfortable life. They are flawed, and I love them, but I don't think their rules are a good fit for me or my mental health. I'm going to be 18 soon, and after graduation I plan to head off to college. Recently, my parents have been trying to make me become more independent. This in itself is not a bad thing, but the problem lies in their approach. I'm the only girl in my family aside from my mother, so in a traditionally Hispanic Catholic household, I was the precious flower in need of protection. I was never allowed to do anything. I couldn't go outside to play by myself. We lived on a military base, probably one of the safest places. I wasn't allowed to get dirty or sit with my legs up because I was a lady. These were just the small things. My father used to say to me, "Seen, not heard." He said this to all of us, my two brothers, one younger, one older, but to me he usually accompanied it with the phrase, "Ladies must not be loud." I didn't cut my hair because my mom thought I looked better with long hair and dresses. I couldn't wear shorts, except under my dress. Around this time, I was being severely bullied by my classmates. They would pull my hair, put glue in it, touch it without asking, drop books on my head, trip me, tear up my papers, etc. When I told my parents a month later, they got upset at me for not telling them earlier, and blamed me for not fighting back. I was 12 years old. Their solution was to tell me that every boy wanted to defile me, and that every girl was jealous, and wished they could be me. So what happened? I started to feel that my self-worth was tied to my looks and virginity. I couldn't make regular friends, and the ones I did make, I couldn't hang out with, after school. Again, military base West Point if you're interested, super small. My friend lived down the road from me, because my parents didn't trust them. Every time we went out, and still to this day, my mother would make comments about my clothing, about how much it was showing. When I was young and on the playground, I was always scolded because older men were looking up my dress, and I was running around and acting childish. Still 12 here. My parents were sexualizing my body before I even had an idea about what that meant. When I started wearing bras, my parents would get upset if we were on a trip, and my brothers complained that I wasn't wearing one. Not at me, but because my brothers and I were fighting. How was that my fault? In those moments and afterward, I felt bad that I was going through puberty. It all came to a head when I was 13, and I was sexually assaulted by the girl I called my best friend. I broke. For as long as I can remember, my self-worth came from my purity and innocence. That was taken from me by the person I called my best friend. I had been bullied before, but now it felt worse. I started to notice that boys were commenting on my body. People would grope me in gym class. I forgot a bra for gym one day, and a girl took me aside and scolded me for tempting the boys. All the while, behind closed doors, my body was being taken from me without my consent. Once she cut me off from all my support systems. She told me she hated me and abandoned me. I had been so focused on what boys might do, nobody even seemed to consider what a girl might do. This is when I started trying to find myself. I realized I was bisexual, and this is when I started to argue with my parents more about going to church. How could I go to a place where everything told me I was a broken, damaged good, and what I wanted and what I felt didn't matter? I still respected their views and religion. I only wish they gave me that same respect. I didn't believe in God anymore, because how could I believe in a being who is said to be loving and kind when what happened to me was one of the most heinous things that could happen to a person? I begged and begged for anyone to come save me. I prayed and prayed, but nobody did. I can't believe in the idea of what God is when He lets so many things happen. Free will be damned. I've tried to tell my parents that I don't want to go to Mass because of my beliefs, and what they've said about people like me. My mother just says, "While you live in my house, it is my job to teach you about the Lord. But I'm not forcing you to go. If you choose not to go, you will bear the consequences when I get home." So I go because I really have no other choice. My parents are the type to punish me until they've decided on a punishment. I can feel people stare at me. I've caught older men staring up my dress. I feel uncomfortable in my own skin and violated. But do my parents listen? No, because by setting my boundaries, I'm disrespecting them. I recently told them what happened to me, and the first thing my mom said was, "Why didn't you tell me?" My mom is a therapist, by the way. She has her doctorate in marriage and family therapy. I would have thought that of all people, my mother would understand why I couldn't say anything. While I was being assaulted in my own home, the person told me, "No one cares about you. You're alone. Look, here we are in your house, and nobody is here to help." When nobody did come, that cemented that thought process in my head. I finally gained the confidence to tell my mother and father, and my parents asked me if I could try to call her or her mom to try and sort things out. I waited until we moved out of the state to say something. Why on earth would I want to call them? My father was upset that I didn't fight back, that I didn't say anything, and that he raised me better than this. This is the reaction they always have when I tell them something like this. Why didn't I do it sooner? My father has diagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder and was abused by his mother. Does he like to talk about it? No. Did he tell anyone during the time it was happening? No. What he said to me broke the sliver of trust I had in my parents. He told me, after I had just told him how I was violated by the person I called my best friend, "I don't get why you lied to me. I have trauma, and some of it, muñeca, which means doll, how fitting, probably is worse than yours." What the heck? He does have trauma, and that is valid, but no trauma is worse than another. Why don't I trust them? Why don't I tell them about when I'm groped, dehumanized, and violated? Because every time I do, they make it about them. How I hurt them, how I lied to them. Somehow I'm always at fault. I gave them my trust and respect, and every time I try to set boundaries or share something with them, they spit in my face. Literally, my father spits a lot when he scolds me, and he has the habit of getting in my face. When I tell him he's spitting on me, I'm being disrespectful for interrupting him and talking back. They've told me that spitting in someone's face is one of the most disrespectful things you could do. All they've shown me is that I'm not allowed to be my own person, that I don't own my own body. They've told me this. Am I over what happened to me? Absolutely not. I still have trouble coming to terms with it. I keep thinking, what if I overreacted? What if I just imagined it? What if it's my fault? I have to work through it, but I won't be doing that with people who throw my trust back in my face, this time covered in mud. I know they love me, and I love them in turn. But that doesn't give them the right to do whatever they want because they're my parents. Because we're Hispanic, there is a hierarchy. Basically, anyone who's older than you is better and worth more as a person, and you have to bend over backward for whatever they want. If you don't, you're disrespecting not only them but the people who raised you too. That is how it will be for the rest of my life. When my parents get older, it's expected that I take care of them full-time and financially support them. The only way I will be higher than someone in the hierarchy is if I or my brothers have children. I am never going to treat my potential offspring like I was treated. Nobody deserves to feel like they mean less than the rest of their family just because they're young. Nobody should be denied the right to privacy or the ability to set boundaries. My parents can set boundaries, but I can't because they're my parents and the rules don't apply to them. It's giving off Nixon vibes. They have parental controls on my phone, drawing tablet, and TV, using an app designed for 12-year-olds. I'm 17. They go through my journal and my browsing history. They're angry, they don't have biometrics on my phone, and they get upset about my password because they can't remember it. I've given it to them multiple times. I changed it to a pattern to make it easier for them. They go through my room, trash, drawings, etc. They've removed my door because I closed it, not locked it, just closed it. I'm not allowed to lock my room. They don't trust me enough to chat with my friends on Discord. Some of them don't have a phone, because I'm too naive, whatever that means. I can't spend my own money and get in trouble if I use it to buy food. I can't go out with friends if my parents don't like them. They don't like a lot of them. They go through my sketchbook, and if they don't like what I drew, they ask me to shred it. If I refuse, they shred it themselves. It's usually just characters from a horror game or supernatural creatures like wendigos, zombies, giraffes. I don't draw inappropriate content like they think that's just nasty. They say it's too graphic and mature for me, the person who drew them. So I draw digitally and don't draw anything I like to draw. It's gotten to the point that when they threaten me with taking away my phone, electronics, or whatever I've been fixating on, I don't care. I don't become emotionally attached to anything because I know it's at risk of being destroyed. Strict parents can teach you a lot, like how to recognize who's walking by the sound of their footsteps, or how to fake being asleep well enough to trick military veterans. I have done this. Or my personal favorite, how to find a loophole in parental controls. Like just getting a second browser app and connecting it to a new email, then putting parental controls on that email that you control from your drawing tablet, so they can't get control of that browser. Or how to remotely control the family computer and put inappropriate content in your parents' personal user history, so they get upset and try to clear it, resetting their settings in the process without having to touch it and leaving no trail. I don't watch inappropriate content, but I do sometimes like to mess with them. Then they wonder how it got there. And if you get caught, just do the same thing a little differently. Strict parents aren't teaching their kids to be better than others. They're teaching them how to get better at hiding and finding loopholes. And then your kids don't trust you, and you lose your relationship with them when they turn 18. It is my life, and I'm not going to give it up just so I can cater to my parents' every whim. Don't get me wrong, if they need it, I'll take care of them, but I'm not going to do it because I have to, and it's my obligation as their child to return the favor of them raising me. If I do, it will be because I want to, and I love them. That may sound cold and heartless, but I didn't choose to be born. They chose to have me. When they did that, it became their obligation to raise the child they brought into the world. If they didn't want me, they shouldn't have had me. They could have chosen an abortion or put me up for adoption, but I'm not going to sacrifice my life just because they got a participation award for parenting. I love my parents, and I know deep down that they don't realize what they do is hurtful. No matter how hard I try, I can't explain my feelings and how my experiences affected me to people who didn't grow up with it, to people who don't want to understand because it challenges their worldview. There is a lot more, but this has gone on for way too long, and I don't think many people will read this whole thing. But if you did, thank you for reading my long rant. It means a lot to me that people will listen. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences and opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.